Well, it's time now for the press review, and for that I'm joined in the studio by Leo McGuinn. Hi, Leo. Now, as you've been hearing this morning, 2 more hostages have been released by Hamas in Gaza, bringing the total number of hostages released to 4. Negotiations, of course, continuing to free the some 200 hostages still in Gaza. How is this latest development being reported today?
Yeah, actually, I'll start with the front page of the Eye this morning. Here you can see those 2 hostages that were released. Yocheved Lifshitz, 85 years old, and Nurit Cooper, 79. They've been let go after being captured on the 7th of October. Both of their husbands remain in captivity, however. But as you can see here in this headline in the Wall Street Journal, talks to free up to 50 more captives have stumbled over Hamas demands that fuel be delivered into the enclave. So far, food, water and medicine has come in over the border from Egypt, but no fuel, which is vital for water supplies, and desalination plants and water pumps can no longer operate. According to sources, Israel have refused that request for fuel, saying that they want all hostages to be released before they grant such a request. Negotiations over aid also included the question of who should inspect those vehicles that come into Gaza. Israel has insisted on inspecting cargoes to ensure no weapons or other non-aid items make their way into Gaza. Public pressure is really starting to mount on Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government. It's been over 2 weeks, still over 200 people being kept hostage. I'll bring you Haaretz this morning. They have this editorial piece that says Israel's top priority has to be freeing those hostages. This article is particularly critical of Netanyahu. They note that it took him 9 days to first meet with families of hostages, and it's a matter that he's spoken very little about publicly, as opposed to, say, Joe Biden, who's talked about it a lot in his speeches. This piece actually ends with a rather strong message directed at Netanyahu and his government. They say that Israel's president cannot look at the families of the hostages in the eye and tell them that there's a more urgent mission than bringing their family members back home. They say if the hostages are abandoned, there will be no forgiveness.
And Leo, this of course coming against the backdrop of a seemingly imminent ground invasion by IDF forces. What's the latest in the Israeli papers today, Leo?
So this is in the Times of Israel this morning. They say that the Israel Defense Force is ready for a ground invasion, and they believe it should start soon. The army want to carry out the invasion, even if it means heavy losses, according to this piece, although they say that the army fear that they will never be given the order by their higher-ups. Israel's largest backer, the US, have urged restraint. They want the invasion to be delayed until more hostages can be freed. However, the US and the UK have clashed with the European Union over the idea of a ceasefire, as we can see on the front page of the Telegraph this morning. France, as well as other EU leaders, have called on what French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne has described as a humanitarian truce. Josep Borrell, the EU's top foreign diplomat, has argued that a halting of Israeli bombing would allow for more time to negotiate freeing those hostages. On the other hand, Biden has dismissed the ceasefire call, saying that talks could only take place after hostages were released, a sentiment backed by UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who says that Israel has the right to defend itself.
OK, well, Leo, we move away now from the Middle East. You found an interesting piece in this morning's papers on the growing risk of malaria.
Yeah, a really interesting long read in the Washington Post this morning. They talk about the risk of malaria spreading. By 2040, they say over 5 billion people could be at risk of the disease. That's because of the correlation between climate change and malaria. With the average temperature rising, it means the transmission seasons go on longer and longer. Mozambique has been particularly badly affected this year. They're on course to reach their highest level since 2017. South America could be badly affected by the increase, but it would be the continent of Africa that would be the worst hit. Let me show you this map that was in the Washington Post this morning. This shows the transmission season in sub-Saharan Africa, Central Africa, could be 12 months a year by 2070. Malaria was responsible for more than 600,000 deaths in 2021. Most of them, 3/4 in fact, of victims under the age of 5. But it's also the fact that Mozambique and other countries with the highest malaria cases also have some of the world's highest growing populations. That's another problem. That combined with the effects of longer transmission seasons and demographic growth could be a bit of a nightmare, and it gets us to that 5 billion number potentially at risk by 2040, including 1 billion on the continent of Africa alone.
And Leo, we're finishing in Iceland, where tens of thousands of women are planning a walkout today in protest at gender inequality in the country. Tell us more.
Yeah, as you say, Hexie, tens of thousands of women in Iceland will refuse to work today, as we can see in the Iceland Monitor, and that includes the country's Prime Minister, Katrín Jakobsdóttir. I don't speak Icelandic, but my Google Translate skills are pretty good, so the headline reads, Katrín Jakobsdóttir attracts world attention. The walkout has been called in protest at the gender pay gap, but also gender-based violence. It will mark the first full-day women's strike since 1975. Women and non-binary people have been urged to refuse paid and unpaid work on Tuesday, including household chores, and that will include the Prime Minister as well. The country still isn't completely equal in terms of pay, one of the best in the world, but still not completely equal. So that's why women are taking matters into their own hands.
A strike I can certainly get behind. Leo McGuinn with a look through the papers today. Thank you very much.